Hey there everyone, welcome back to another look between the lines. Today in the news you're seeing a lot of the same things where we've already discussed a lot of it with the ongoing election drama, the COVID outbreaks and everything that's going on, and I wanted to take this chance to kind of go into something that we haven't covered yet, but is still a very real issue that's affecting our generation and future ones as well. Pollution and climate change. I really want to talk about the impacts of what that's going to mean for us if left unchecked. Even if you don't entirely believe in the science, that's something that we can talk about, and we can talk about what is real and what's easily observable. There's a lot that goes on around the world, not just in the United States when it comes to this, and there's a lot of impact that goes far beyond our own borders. Planet's a lot smaller than it's ever been, and so without further ado, let's get into this. So you can't really bring up climate change without talking about the history of our planet. Our planet's pretty old, several billion years old in fact, and this all began very, very long ago. Whether you're a creationist or whether you believe in evolution or somewhere in the middle, one thing is true: our geological records have shown that the history of our species and many others has developed over the course of a very long time. Throughout all of this history, which is really hard to fathom because us humans here in 2020, our life expectancy isn't even a full century, not even 100 years. It's hard to grasp what 1,000 years is, 10,000, a million, but to go even further at billions of years, you have to look beyond the eyes of a simple human lifespan, and you really have to look at it from a planetary scale. When the dinosaurs were wiped out by the meteor impact that's theorized that created a global ice age, or even the heating and cooling periods that have happened every few million years over the course of our history, this is all recorded in our geological records, and that's what's interesting that's coming out as we're studying this and looking at the impacts all of this is going to have. And this isn't to get on either side of the fence of the current debate of climate change. The climate is going to change, and our impact is only going to worsen what could happen, but that's not the real issue at play here. The reason why we hear about climate change and why we have to hear on why it's such a big issue is that every time throughout all of the planet's history that there's been one of these big shifts, it has led to widespread devastation amongst the existing species. If we go into a heating period that actually melts some of the ice caps, rising water levels is just going to be a bad thing for everyone and everything on this planet. Despite the incalculable amount of damage that would be done financially to all the coastal cities, islands, and other places that would be lost, the change in temperatures would wipe out incalculable species and affect our crops and so much more. It's this impact that people are concerned about, this impact that will affect generations, that this all could create issues that our children would have to deal with, our children's children, or even further on if it's not addressed now. While it is possible that just as all species have in the past, everyone will adapt, that's not going to change the damage that will be done. Humans can have a play in this to avoid such widespread ruin. We don't need to create that kind of damage on ourselves to pay off in the future, or to have people suffer, or worse, just because we don't want to take care of some things right now. And yes, even here at Between the Lines, we've talked about how the media is very biased in trying to push agendas, but one thing about climate change is true. You cannot deny certain things about it, even if you disagree with the overall principles that are trying to be pushed. So let's talk about those undeniable facts first of all. And one of the easiest first talking points is plastics. Plastics do not degrade over time. They're very cheap to make, very cheap to use, and that's why it's so widespread. But if you look at several billion people using this on a daily basis and then throwing it away, where does it all go? If it goes out into the ocean, have you ever swam in an ocean that has floating Coke cans, trash bags, or other things that are just all around it? You wouldn't want to. No one would. But that's the unfortunate truth about plastic. Since it doesn't degrade, it just piles up. For those of you that ever grew up around a campfire, a golden rule is you don't throw plastics in there and then try and smell it because it's known to be toxic. That's something that we're taught even as kids, and that's pretty widely known common knowledge when it comes to just what plastic does. And so if that on an individual level is something that we're taught to be wary of, why would it be okay on a global scale, and what can we do about it? There's a lot of initiatives to move away from plastics and other non-degradable products for this very reason, because as things build up, it destroys ecosystems. We humans are creatures of convenience. We wish to avoid swimming in trash-filled rivers or swimming around in plastic or runoff. Animals that live and require those environments to survive are a different story. And everything in our world is part of everything else's lives, directly and indirectly. From the moment anything is born or created, it starts utilizing energy, nutrients, and other chemicals that it gets from its parents, from its egg, from its environment, and it takes that from everything around. Whether eaten by a predator, whether sustaining something else, or simply when it dies and feeds other detrivores, or any part that it has in that cycle, one thing is undeniable is that it does go on. And if you take out from the cycle with something that doesn't put back in, like plastic, it creates roadblocks that get in the way of that. And as creatures die off, the creatures that rely on them suffer, and if they in turn die off, it creates other widespread issues that can affect the entire planet. One of the most widespread effects that we hear about today is climate change. And again, it's not just the fact that the climate is changing, it's that it's going to be changing in a catastrophic way that we're not prepared for. And to go back to the burning plastics in a campfire, humans need clean air to breathe. We all do, and that's not something that's debatable or even something that should be politicized. We just need clean air to breathe. And the plants and forests and the algae of the world are the reason that we have clean air, because it filters out the gases that are produced by our own activities. And trust me when I say you can read about this for days, so let's stick away from the more complicated science to just accept that that's something that we can all agree on. And to loop this back in, we can also all agree on that all creatures are part of the circle of life that basically sustains us all and the balance that we all rely on. So yes, one of the biggest arguments against that is that it's true that people will adapt, but to put that together, just because some will adapt doesn't mean many will, and just because you might live, that fact doesn't justify inflicting suffering on others or future generations, or setting something up that we might not be able to fix. Empathy is a dying breed nowadays. You see that in a world where everyone is taught to look after themselves and to take care of things that only benefit themselves no matter the cost. But this takes away from the fact that we are all in this together. From the very first human tribes to the great countries of today, humans have to work together to survive. We always have and always will. So we can't discredit what's going to impact the rest of the world, because discrediting what's going on in the rest of the world is not going to make it not affect us down the road. Just like if you wipe out a species, the creatures that depend on it will hurt everyone that we trade with, every farmer that we deal with, every import, every export. In our global economy, it's all going to suffer if one part of it gets destroyed or damaged. And that's an undeniable fact. Out of the ever-increasing human population, the billions upon billions of us, we all are going to look out for ourselves in some way or another, but that needs to include little changes that are going to look at what's going on. And many TikTok stars and YouTubers have picked this up. They've been doing something beautiful by making viral videos of them cleaning up these destroyed places where trash has been building up just to try and make a difference. Does that get rid of the trash? No, but it's something. And while we're on the point of undeniable facts, if one person can clean up an entire beach, imagine what 7 billion people could do if everyone just did a little bit just like that for one day. Then to take it a step further, imagine what that many people could do if we all came together to agree on initiatives to try and change things for the better. If we're not getting rid of fossil fuels quite yet, why not each plant a tree? If we're not going to move away from coal burning or using coal as fuel, which not many are able to afford to do, why not focus on doing little things, like changing your thermostat just to use a little bit less power until a new solution is implemented, or until something is done. The government is trying to do what they can in regards to taxation. They're talking about a carbon emission tax. And let's be real, nobody likes taxes. Even if it goes to something you appreciate, no one likes having to spend that money or having it taken out of your paycheck. This is something as old as the tax system itself, and there are so many grievances against tax collectors or taxmen because of this ever since the first human civilizations came up with currency. But one thing is true. When there are taxes implemented, there are people that want to rise up and find a way around that. If there's a carbon emission tax, it's going to push for more green technologies to be pushed by the private sector, as long as it's not barred by the same governments that are taxing it. You can't overly regulate new technologies if you want innovation, but you have to have some to protect the people. And so it's an interesting balancing act that we're going to have to see how the private sector is going to compete if that's the route we go, or what the government's going to do to incentivize programs just like what happened with Elon Musk and Tesla coming out with so many battery-powered cars and the innovations that he's made to get us away from fossil fuels. And while batteries are not nearly environmentally friendly, it's a step. a step in the right direction. So what's the next one going to be, and what can we do on an individual scale to help in this process? We're all in this together. This planet is smaller than it's ever been, and it's only going to keep getting smaller as the human population increases until something changes. So I say, why not stick together and make that change something positive? Make it to where we have room for more growth as opposed to something that forces us to take a step back. I want to know what your thoughts are, so tell us in the comments, what do you think we can do as individuals? What do you think governments need to do to keep on stepping up and trying to fight these problems of pollution, climate change, species going extinct, and so many other issues that we can find solutions for if we all work together? So tell us what you think in the comments. We want to know. Let's talk about it. And other than that, thank you all for joining. Please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us out as this channel grows. And as always, stay safe out there, and thank you for joining us for another look between the lines. Take care.